Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Florida Gators officially released their depth chart heading into the 2023 season, and this is probably one of the depth charts across the country that I've been most excited to come out because all summer long, and this is a program we've talked a ton about this summer. We've been talking about the new faces that could be playmakers for this Florida team heading into the 2023 season. Now you finally get your answer at who are going to be some of the guys that are getting most of the snaps, making most of the plays for this Florida team. Going to be breaking it down, getting into some position groups that I'm really excited about, some names that I'm kind of surprised are at the top of the list, and then some names that you're kind of surprised are a little lower on this depth chart as well. Now, before we get into it, just want to say to the Florida fans, thank you guys so much for all the support you guys have shown. We've talked this Florida Gators team a ton during the offseason. I've learned a ton from you guys. I've loved talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So one, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, chopping it up about the depth chart, having some players that you guys have that I need to add to the notebook. That's the best part about doing this, talking ball with you guys. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. And let's get into this group. And I think you got to start with that wide receiver position. This is probably a position that we've talked the most about heading into the 2023 season. You know that I'm a recruiting nerd, and I've been consistently mentioning Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mazzell, Andy Jean. Now, those guys are going to play, but I want to talk about some other wide receivers that you guys have been letting me know in the comment section, I might be sleeping on a little bit. Now, Ricky Pearsall is the guy, Steady Eddie. He's one of the most productive wide receiver in this group, the most experienced wide receiver in this group. He's really the only senior in the 3-deep at the wide receiver position. He's going to play a lot. He's going to be the guy. That being said, after Ricky Pearsall, I'm really excited to see who kind of steps up. Caleb Douglas is a name that you guys have been very frustrated with me in terms of sleeping on. There's probably an element of truth to that, right? I sometimes gravitate to the freshmen that I've watched at the high school ranks and say, oh, those guys are going to play right away. Caleb Douglas has been a dude that consistently seen in the comment section. He's going to be a starting wide receiver. And then let's talk about Khalil Jackson real quick. And this is a guy that I read the fall camp practice notes every night, and you keep seeing his name. And then it's you're not really sure. Former walk-on, are they just kind of praising him because he's made a lot of progress, or is he actually going to be a dude for this Florida Gators team heading into 2023? You get your answer with this depth chart. He's going to be starting. He's going to be a dude for this Florida Gators team heading into 2023. That's really exciting. I do want to highlight the three freshmen. And it sounds like, from what you've been reading in fall camp notes and then what you see on this depth chart, Eugene Wilson, out of the three true freshman wide receivers, is probably going to be the guy that plays the most, at least early on. And then it's probably Aiden Mazzell and then Andy Jean. But Eugene Wilson, and we talk about this a lot as a true freshman wide receiver, it's kind of easy to translate your game. If you're just more twitched up, if you're just faster, if you're just different athletically coming out of high school, the wide receiver position, it's a little bit easier to play because if you're straight up just a better athlete, faster than whoever's trying to cover you, you're going to be able to play early. Whether you're jumping from from college football to the NFL or from high school to college, that translates. On the offensive line, defensive line, that's a little bit more okay, you got to get some more physical maturation before you go from high school to playing in college football. But I think Eugene Wilson's going to play a lot because he's just different athletically. Now, getting to this offensive line, I think this is here's my take on the offensive line after kind of reading, so keeping up with the fall camp practice notes, seeing this depth chart. The starting five, I really, really like. I mean, you're comfortable if this group stays healthy. This is a really good offensive line, and Billy Napier is going to produce good offensive lines. That's kind of the identity of this offense. And you look at the starting five names, you're really comfortable heading into the season with this group. Now, injuries, guys hitting the transfer portal, I think has hurt the depth of this offensive line. This was a group that was really deep last year. I don't think it's quite as deep heading into the 2023 season. So my take on this, if Florida stays healthy on the offensive line, I really like the bones of what this offense can be. That being said, if an injury or two pops up, and I'm kind of interested to hear the Florida Gators fans' opinions on this, if a couple injuries happen on this offensive line, then I start getting a little bit more skeptical of how good this group can be. But at the end of the day, I'm going to trust Billy Napier and the staff to have a good offensive line because it's the heart and soul of this offense. And as of right now, this depth chart fully healthy, it's a really good starting five that I feel like a lot of the national media likes to sleep on because you lose guys like Osiris Torrance, you lose a ton of starters through the NFL draft or the transfer portal. And on paper, you're like, yeah, this group is going to take a step back. No, this is a good offensive line. It might have some depth concerns, but in terms of the starting five, like I really do like this offensive line. Now, moving to that tight end room, that's probably the biggest surprise you see is Tony Livingston, who, again, as like the recruiting nerd I am, I remember him coming out projecting as an offensive tackle. Now he's your starting tight end. I'm really excited about what he can do, probably inline blocking a little bit, but also being a dynamic dude over the middle of the field. I wouldn't say this is like the best group on the team, but seeing a true freshman in Tony Livingston emerge as the starter, if you had to ask me what true freshman do you think will be listed as a starter heading into the 2023 season, Tony Livingston would not have been on my list. And he's the one that is getting the starting nod on the offensive side of the ball for the Florida Gators. Quarterback Graham Mertz, you know he's going to be a guy. I'm really excited. You guys know how my take on Graham Mertz. Like, you've seen so many transfer quarterbacks. And I saw someone on Twitter say, like, Bo Nix transfer from Auburn to Oregon really lit it up. Michael Penix from Indiana to Washington. You've seen quarterbacks hit the transfer portal after being kind of pedestrian at their old schools and kind of take over. I'm not saying Graham Mertz is going to be Michael Penix, or because they're not going to ask him to be Michael Penix or Bo Nix. That being said, like, I'm really excited to see what Graham Mertz can do with this Florida Gators offense, because even Paul Chryst at Wisconsin last year said, yeah, we probably didn't use Graham Mertz the way he should have. The running back room, absolutely loaded. One of the best two-headed backfields that you'll see, Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, and Webb, true freshman, getting into the three deep. I like to see that for sure. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, this is where, like, it kind of could get a little bit, not crazy, but like you were a little bit more confused about how this depth chart is going to shake out on the defensive side of the ball. Tyreek Sapp moving over to that edge position. I really like, you look at this defensive line, and this is something that we've talked a ton about during the offseason. This is a deeper, more talented, bigger, faster, physical group than you saw last year. And that was a massive problem. Outside of Gron Dexter, like, this was not that great of a defensive line, especially from a depth standpoint. You're talking about going three deep of guys that you probably are pretty comfortable trotting out and starting. Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks, I think, add tremendous depth and talent. I mean, I keep saying the word depth. I think Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks are both guys that are going to be playing in the NFL at some point during their football career. So I probably should stop using the word depth and start using they added talent. Like, they added guys who I think could be all SEC caliber dudes. You have Chris McClellan coming in the two deep. I'm really, really excited about the freshman Will Norman, Kelby Collins. Like, this is a much better group from a talent standpoint and from a depth standpoint. I think they're going to turn some heads. Obviously, Princely, you coming from that jack position, he is during my NFL draft prep this summer, like, I have him as, like, this dude could be a top 50 pick if he puts it together. Like, really, really talented caliber guy. Going to that linebacker room, a lot of oars. And I will say, I think the oars a lot of times are a good thing, because what does that tell you about the coaching staff is, hey, we feel good about a couple different dudes starting for us. Now, there's two ways you could read into it. One, nobody's really won the job. That might not be good. Or the more optimistic way is, hey, we feel good about a couple different guys playing for us. And I think in this circumstance, with the talent you have at the linebacker room, like, you're probably feeling pretty good. I mean, Shamar James is going to be a starter. I think he could be like a first team all SEC kind of guy. Outside of that, you got a bunch of names that I think you're really excited about. Derek Wingo, Terada Mitchell coming over from Ohio State. Like, it's a talented group that's headlined by, I think, a budding star in Shamar James. Going to the secondary, this is probably where you have, like, I'm really excited about this group. And I want to start at the safety spot first. I think a lot of us assumed Miguel Mitchell and Kamari Wilson would be the starting safeties. Those guys are going to play a lot. Jordan Castile coming in as a true freshman, earning a starting spot at the safety position. And I'll say this real quick. He gets it over RJ Moten, who, as a Michigan fan, like, RJ Moten is a very quality safety. I don't think he's a top 50 pick in the NFL draft. That being said, he played a lot for a Michigan team that was really, really good in that safety room. Jordan Castile winning that job over RJ Moten, over a veteran who's played a lot of football his first 3 years of college football, that tells you that Jordan Castile is ready to play. And you take a look at this safety group as a whole: Miguel Mitchell, Kamari Wilson, Jordan Castile, RJ Moten. That's a really, really good force players that are going to be in the safety room. That I talked with a few Florida Gator fans when we talked about this defense last year. Torrance and Trey Dean, like, that was a group that you were always really excited about. And I never really felt like they met their potential, like they met their preseason hype. You might have some younger talent coming in that could give you a little bit of a bump at the core. Well, we start at the star position. Jaden Hill and Perkins just absolutely battling it out there. And I think that's a circumstance too, where it's like you just got two guys that you're really comfortable with at that star position, two guys that have gotten like progressively better during fall camp, and just nobody's really peeled itself away. That'll be a competition that plays out during the season. But at that nickel spot, especially in this Austin Armstrong defense, like it's really good to have some depth there because that is a hard position that you're going to be asked to do a lot of different things. Cornerback room, Jason Marshall Jr., like he's going to be a guy. My eyes are on Jakeem Jackson, and I wonder if he can kind of compete with Devin Moore and Jalen Kimber on the other side as well in terms of being a starter. Because if you get Jason Marshall Jr. reaching his potential, I think he's a top 50 NFL draft pick. And then if you get Jakeem Jackson, I know being a true freshman, if he reaches his potential early on in his career, you're looking at a secondary room that I think could be really, really good. And that's kind of the story of this Florida team is it's a young team. You're not totally sure what you have with a lot of these guys yet. They haven't played a ton of football. That being said, the talent that Billy Napier is kind of starting to accumulate, it's there. Now, which of these guys are going to emerge as being like those dudes for Florida? We're going to find out. And the beauty of this Florida schedule is you're going to find out relatively quickly because you have a massive week 1 matchup against the Utah Utes. Really excited to see which of these players kind of plays because then this is just the depth chart. You're going to figure out really quick who this Florida Gators coaching staff has the most confidence in Thursday night. We'll hop back on at probably Friday morning and kind of break down what we saw from this Florida team. Again, one of my favorite teams to talk about. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys as usual. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.